When I realized what was happening, keys had disappeared, documents had vanished, and voices tormented me every night. "She's going crazy," they whispered through the walls. My husband and mother-in-law were slowly destroying me to steal everything I had built in 35 years of life. Good morning, my dear friends. What a joy to share a little bit of my life with you today. I'm Juliet Brandon Ferreira, 76 years young, and I live in Portland, Oregon, a beautiful green city I've called home for almost 20 years. I ended up in this blessed corner after quite a struggle. But thank God, today I can say I've found peace in this land of many trees and good people. You know, my dears, today my life is quite peaceful. I spend my mornings tending to my garden. I have a cherry tree that gives the sweetest fruit you've ever tasted. In the afternoons, I coordinate a support group for women who suffer from psychological abuse at the Portland Women's Center. It started accidentally, you see. After what I went through, I felt I needed to use my experience to help others going through the same struggles I faced. I have a simple but cozy house here in the Laurelhurst neighborhood, with a view of the park. My little place is small, but filled with plants and photos of my 2 grandchildren, Jack and Beatrice, children of my only daughter, Claire. She's lived with me for 10 years since her divorce. She was my safe harbor when I needed it most. You know, before retiring, I worked as an architect. I was always an independent, educated woman, raised by my mother to never depend on any man. But life takes unexpected turns, doesn't it, my dears? And it was one of those turns that led me to fall into a terrible trap, the kind you wouldn't believe exists outside of suspense movies. Oh, before continuing my story, I'd like to ask those of you watching now, if you can, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps this grandma continue sharing her stories. And tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? And what time of day did you find this video? Early morning with coffee, after lunch, or late in the evening? I love knowing where you're from and how you fit in time to listen to this grandma's stories. Let's create a chain of caring. Today I'm going to tell you about how I survived a type of violence that many people don't even know exists, but that destroys the lives of so many women out there. Have you heard of gaslighting? It's when someone manipulates you in such a sneaky way that you begin to doubt your own sanity. That's what happened to me, at the hands of the man I swore to love until death parted us and his mother. A web of lies so well woven that it almost drove me truly insane. I was born and raised in a small town called Millfield in northern Ohio. My father, Sebastian Brandon, was a mathematics teacher at the only school in town. A serious man of few words, but with a sweet look when we managed to get a smile out of him. My mother, Gertrude Almeida Brandon, was an excellent seamstress, the kind who made wedding dresses that looked like works of art. My mother had fairy hands. We were 3 sisters, me, the middle one, between Eleanor, 2 years older, and Celia, 3 years younger. Our house was simple, wooden, with a huge backyard where my father planted all sorts of things: potatoes, corn, strawberries, and a cherry tree that was my pride and joy. Since I was little, I liked to stay under that tree, drawing on notebook pages my father brought from school. In the 1950s, Millfield was a place where everyone knew everyone. We walked to school, strolling down dirt roads, playing with the dew on leaves along the way. On the way back, all the kids gathered to play tag, hide and seek, and ring around the rosy. Back then, fun was simple, but we had much more fun than kids today, glued to their cell phones. Our routine was marked by the whistle of the steel mill near town. We woke up at 5 in the morning when the first whistle blew, announcing the start of the day. By 6, we were all up. My father left for school, Mom started her sewing work, and we helped with household chores before going to class. Washing dishes, sweeping the yard, feeding the chickens, each of us had our duties. After school, we played until the sun began to set. That's when the third whistle from the mill sounded at 5 in the afternoon, and we knew it was time to go home. At night, after dinner, we sat on the porch to listen to stories my father told about the old days, about immigrants arriving in the region, about how those fertile lands were promising. My best friend was Ivy, the pharmacist's daughter. We were inseparable, like peas in a pod. We went to school together, played together, dreamed together. She wanted to be a doctor. I already dreamed of being an architect. We spent hours drawing the houses where we would live when we grew up. I paid special attention to details, to windows, to balconies. Even then, I showed my vocation. My father, noticing my talent for drawing, began to encourage me. He brought art books from the Cleveland Library when he went there, taught me perspective, proportion. "You have a gift, Juliet," he would say. "One day you'll build houses as beautiful as the ones you draw." Those words planted in me the seed of what I would become. Life was hard in those days, but we didn't notice. My parents worked from sunrise to sunset to give us an education. My mother, besides sewing, sold homemade treats at the Sunday farmers market. Apple pies, peanut brittle, pumpkin bread that was just wonderful. My father gave private lessons after school hours, all to ensure we had opportunities they didn't have. I remember once a month we would go to Cleveland, the nearest big city. It was an event. We would dress in our best clothes. Mom would spend hours ironing dresses with the hot iron. We went by bus, an old vehicle that bumped along the dirt road. But it didn't matter. For us, it was a great adventure. In Cleveland, my father took care of business, Mom bought fabrics, and we children were amazed by the store windows, ice cream, the hustle and bustle. It was on one of these trips that I saw a real tall building for the first time and decided, I want to make that when I grow up. Little did I know that this dream would take me far from there, to study architecture in the city. The first signs that I would be different from the other girls in town began to appear when I entered adolescence. While my friends dreamed of marriage, of finding a nice local boy, I dreamed of university, of creating projects, of traveling. My mother was worried. "Girl, you need to learn to cook properly to take care of a house. How will you find a husband like this?" But my father always defended me. "Leave the girl alone, Gertrude. The world is changing." And that's how I spent my childhood, between playing in the yard, drawing imaginary houses, stories on the porch, and dreams of a different future. A time of innocence before life showed me its hardest sides, and I learned that we can't always trust those who swore to protect us. When I turned 18 in 1967, I got a scholarship to study architecture at Ohio State University in Columbus. It was a commotion in the family. My father, proud as could be, bought a bottle of port wine to celebrate, something he only did on very special occasions. As for my mother, poor thing, she cried for a week. "How are you going to live alone in a big city, girl? Aren't you afraid?" The truth is that I was afraid. Millfield was tiny compared to Columbus, but the dream was bigger than the fear. I packed my bags, 2 cardboard suitcases with my clothes and drawing materials, and boarded a Greyhound bus to the capital. My father accompanied me on the 10-hour journey, got me settled in a boarding house for female students, and returned with watery eyes, but his chest puffed with pride. Life in the capital wasn't easy at first. Mrs. Mafalda's boarding house was in the University District. It was a large, old house that sheltered 12 female students. We had to share rooms and bathrooms and follow strict rules. Gates closed at 10 at night, no male visitors, meals at set times. It seemed like a convent, but it was what my parents could afford, and I was too happy with the opportunity to complain. The School of Architecture was a new world. Demanding professors, classmates who came from rich families in the capital, drawing equipment I had never seen. I felt small, provincial, out of place. But I had determination. I spent sleepless nights studying, saved every last penny of the allowance my father sent to buy books and materials. Gradually, I gained respect, made friendships, found my place. It was in my last year of college, in 1972, that my life changed forever. I was 23 years old and had secured an internship at an important architectural firm in Columbus. Thomas & Associates was a reference in high-end residential projects, and that's where I met William. Oh my God. When I remember him from that time, I still feel a tightness in my chest. William Augustus Ferreira was a stunning man. 35 years old, a civil engineering graduate, son of an important builder in the city. Tall, penetrating green eyes, a smile that lit up any room. And cultured. He talked about literature, classical music, travels through Europe. I, a small-town girl who had barely left Ohio, was enchanted. He was a minority partner in the firm and supervised the interns. From day one, he treated me differently. He praised my drawings, invited me to lunch to discuss projects, lent me books from his personal library. The other interns were dying of envy. "Dr. William never gives anyone so much attention," they whispered in the hallways. After 3 months of professional meetings, he invited me to dinner at an elegant downtown restaurant. It was our first official night as a couple. I remember every detail. The navy blue dress I bought especially for the occasion, the French wine he ordered, the live pianist music. He held my hand across the table and said, "Juliet, you're different from all the women I've ever met. You have talent, intelligence, and a purity that enchants me." The courtship was quick and intense. In 6 months, we were engaged. My parents came to Columbus to meet him and were impressed. An established man from a good family who promised to give their daughter a life of comfort and stability. Who wouldn't be happy? Only my sister Eleanor showed some reservation. "Isn't he a bit too controlling, Jules?" she asked when we were alone. I ignored the comment. I was too in love to see any flaws. We got married in July 1973 in an elegant ceremony at St. Joseph Cathedral. The reception was at the Columbus Club, with more than 200 guests, mostly William's friends and business associates, and his father, Mr. Oscar Ferreira. On my side, only my family and a few college friends. I remember the strange feeling of looking around and barely recognizing the faces at my own wedding reception. Our honeymoon was in New York City. 10 days in a luxurious hotel, dinners in expensive restaurants, cultural tours. I felt like I was living a fairy tale. The small-town architect who conquered the capital's prince. But it was during this trip that I noticed the first signs of what would become my nightmare. William insisted on choosing my clothes before we went out. "This dress isn't suitable for tonight's dinner, darling. Wear the blue one that matches your eyes." At first, I interpreted it as care, attention to detail. Later, when I wanted to visit a museum that wasn't on the itinerary he had planned, I noticed his barely disguised irritation. "Juliet, I've already organized our day. Why do you always want to change things?" Again, I justified it. He was organized, liked to plan. I was being picky. When we returned to Columbus, William suggested that I not return to work immediately. "We need to organize our home, darling, and soon we'll want to start a family. Why don't you wait a bit?" I was reluctant, but ended up agreeing. After all, he was right. I wanted to be a mother soon, and the idea of decorating and organizing our new home, a 3-bedroom apartment in an upscale neighborhood, was tempting. What I didn't know was that a bit would turn into forever. William always found a new reason to postpone my return to work. First, it was the house, then the promise of children, which never came when we were together. Then his mother, Mrs. Helen, who became a widow, and according to him, needed company. Ah, Mrs. Helen. I still get chills remembering that woman, tall, elegant, always impeccably dressed and coiffed. On the outside, the perfect mother-in-law, polite, seemingly affectionate. In the first months after her husband's death, she indeed seemed fragile and grateful for my company. But I soon realized that behind that contained smile was a manipulative woman who never thought I was good enough for her precious son. It was 3 months after Mrs. Helen moved into our apartment that things began to get truly strange. Small objects disappeared, my keys, a hairbrush, letters from my parents. When I asked, both seemed confused. "Darling, you left the keys on the kitchen counter last night. Don't you remember?" William would say with a concern that I now know was false. Mrs. Helen's subtle comments began to become frequent. "Juliet, you've been so distracted lately." It's normal for women your age to start forgetting little things, but perhaps you should see a doctor. Or, William, have you noticed how confused Juliet has been? Yesterday I found her in the living room looking disoriented. And the worst, she always said these things in my presence, as if I wasn't there. Gradually, I began to doubt myself. Was I really forgetting things? Was I becoming confused? I started taking notes, checking where I left my belongings, constantly questioning myself. What I didn't know was that this was just the beginning of the web in which I was being wrapped, a web so subtle and at the same time so strong that it almost completely destroyed me. It was in 1974, about a year after our wedding, that things began to drastically worsen. I was already living practically isolated. William always found excuses for me not to visit my family in Millfield. I have too much work this week, dear. I can't take you. Or, isn't your mother a bit under the weather? Better not risk it. You've been so sensitive lately. My few college friends called less and less. When they scheduled something, William or Mrs. Helen always created some impediment. You look tired today. Better rest. I think you're coming down with the flu, dear. You shouldn't go out. And when, rarely, I managed to meet a friend, William always appeared, by coincidence, at the same place, sat with us, and dominated the conversation. Afterward, on the way back, he made derogatory comments. Your friend Denise has become so bitter since her divorce. I don't think she's good company for you. The apartment, which should have been my home, became a disguised prison. Mrs. Helen reorganized everything her way. My architecture books were sent to storage because they took up too much space. My few personal objects brought from Millfield, a quilt made by my grandmother, a silver picture frame, a music box, mysteriously disappeared and reappeared in different places. Juliet, did you put your grandmother's quilt in the linen closet? I was looking for towels and found it all crumpled up in the back, Mrs. Helen would say with that cold smile. I was absolutely certain that I had left the quilt folded on my reading chair, but I began to doubt myself. It was during this time that the accidents began to happen. I would drop cups, trip on rugs, forget the stove on. At least, that's what they told me. Juliet, you left the iron on all morning. You could have caused a fire, William would exclaim, exasperated. I didn't remember ironing that day, but how could I contest it? At night, I began to hear whispers, muffled voices coming from the walls, talking about me. She's not well. I think she's becoming paranoid. We need to do something. She's getting worse. At first, I thought it was my imagination. Later, I was sure it was William and Mrs. Helen talking about me, thinking I couldn't hear them. What I didn't know was that they wanted me to hear. At a dinner with some of William's colleagues, I spilled a glass of wine on the white tablecloth. A trivial accident, which happens to anyone. But William's reaction was disproportionate. Excuse my wife. She's been so clumsy lately, he said with a tense smile. And then, in a lower tone, but perfectly audible, I've been worried about her behavior. The guests exchanged embarrassed glances. I felt humiliated, exposed. When I tried to defend myself, explain that it was just an accident, William placed his hand over mine in a gesture that seemed affectionate to others, but squeezed my fingers hard enough to leave marks. It's okay, dear. We know you didn't mean to. The financial control also intensified. Although I had inherited a small property from my parents, a piece of land in Millfield that had been sold, I had no access to the money. William insisted on managing everything, claiming that I had no experience with investments. Trust me, I'm doing this for our future. My health began to deteriorate. I lost weight, suffered from insomnia, had frequent crying spells. When I mentioned the possibility of seeing a doctor, William promptly suggested a family friend, Dr. Horace. He's a psychiatrist, dear. I think that's what you need now. Dr. Horace prescribed strong tranquilizers right at the first consultation. Your wife shows clear signs of emotional instability, he told William, as if I wasn't in the room. These medications will help her calm down. It's important that she takes them regularly. The medicines left me lethargic, confused, even more vulnerable. There were days when I could barely get out of bed. William, always solicitous, personally administered my medication. "It's time for your medicine, dear. I know you don't like it, but it's for your own good." Sometimes I had the impression that the dose was higher than prescribed, but how could I be sure? It was on a Sunday afternoon when William and Mrs. Helen had gone out to visit some relatives that I accidentally found a box in his office. I was looking for a book to read, and upon opening a drawer, I came across several bottles of medications, the same ones I was taking, and a notebook. With trembling hands, I opened the notebook. It was a detailed record of my supposed erratic behavior. Dates, times, incidents, many of which I didn't even remember happening. March 23rd. Juliet woke up disoriented, didn't recognize the room for a few minutes. April 17th. Found Juliet talking to herself in the kitchen. When questioned, she denied it. I felt my stomach turn. This couldn't be true. I didn't remember any of these episodes. I continued flipping through the notebook and found something even more disturbing. A draft letter addressed to a psychiatric clinic, requesting information about involuntary commitment. It was as if a veil had been lifted. Why would William be falsely documenting my behavior? Why would he be considering having me committed? What would he gain from this? And then I remembered my inheritance. The money from the sold land, investments my parents had made in my name, a small apartment that my maternal grandmother had left me. At that moment, I heard the noise of the front door opening. Quickly, I put the notebook away, closed the drawer, and left the office. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would explode. I needed to stay calm, pretend that nothing had changed. I needed a plan. In the following days, I began to pay more attention. I noticed that the objects that disappeared were always moved by them. I saw Mrs. Helen messing with my things when she thought I wasn't looking. One night, I woke up to a strange noise and, keeping my eyes almost closed, saw William installing something on the bedroom wall. A small speaker, disguised behind a picture. The voices I heard during the night weren't paranoia. They were recordings. They were deliberately trying to drive me insane. And worst of all, they were about to have me committed against my will, probably to gain total control over my assets. The discovery, as terrifying as it was, gave me a clarity I hadn't had in months. I wasn't going crazy. I was the victim of a cruel conspiracy, orchestrated by those who should protect me. I needed to act, but with extreme caution. One wrong move, and I could end up really locked in an institution, with no chance of defense. The medications were the first obstacle. I began to pretend I was swallowing them, but hid them under my tongue and later discarded them. It was difficult at first. William used to watch me take the pills, but I developed techniques, like coughing and putting my hand to my mouth, or asking for an extra glass of water. As the days passed and the effects of the medications diminished, my mind became clearer. I began to plan my escape. I knew I needed evidence of what they were doing to me. I needed external help. But how to get this when I was practically under house arrest? One afternoon, when Mrs. Helen left for her weekly tea with friends and William was at work, I managed to use the phone to call my sister Eleanor in Millfield. I spoke softly, afraid someone might be listening, or worse, that the phone might be tapped. "Elle, I need your help. I can't explain now, but I'm in danger. William and his mother are trying to... They're doing terrible things." My voice trembled. "They want to commit me, Elle. I think they want to take my money." There was a long silence. For a terrible moment, I thought even my sister doubted me. Finally, she spoke. I knew something was wrong. "You seemed so different the last few times we talked. What can I do to help?" We agreed on a code. If I said, "Grandma's roses are blooming," during any phone conversation, it would mean I needed immediate help. Eleanor would try to visit me the following week, with the excuse of passing through Columbus on her way to Cincinnati. The feeling of having someone believe me was indescribable. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of hope. But I knew the path would be difficult. William and Mrs. Helen were skilled manipulators. I needed to be smarter, more cautious, more determined than ever. When Eleanor called a few days later to announce her visit, William answered. As expected, he tried to dissuade her. It's not a good time, Eleanor. Juliet hasn't been feeling well. The doctor recommended absolute rest, no visits that might agitate her. I could see their plan unfolding before my eyes. The isolation was almost complete, but I was determined not to give up. While they thought they controlled me with medications and manipulation, I was silently gathering strength to fight for my freedom, for my sanity, for my life. It was on a Wednesday in May 1974 that everything reached its limit. I remember perfectly because it was the eve of my mother-in-law's birthday. William had left early to pick up a cake ordered from a famous downtown bakery, and Mrs. Helen was at the beauty salon preparing for her big night. For the first time in weeks, I was alone in the apartment. I took the opportunity to look for more evidence. I knew I needed something concrete to show someone who could help me. In William's office, I searched carefully, taking mental note of the exact position of each object to replace them afterward. That's when I found, hidden under a stack of engineering magazines, a folder with my name. My hands were shaking so much I could barely turn the pages. Inside were bank statements from my accounts I didn't even know existed, documents transferring funds to an account in the Cayman Islands, a power of attorney with my signature, forged, as I had never signed such a document, giving William powers to manage all my assets. And the most disturbing, a preliminary medical report signed by Dr. Horace, diagnosing me with persistent delusional disorder and recommending hospitalization for intensive treatment. The date set for my commitment was May 30th, just 2 weeks away. Their plan was in the final phase. The web was almost complete. I felt my body go cold, my legs weaken. I sat down in the office chair, unable to move, as the reality of that conspiracy hit me with full force. It was the noise of the front door opening that snapped me out of the trance. Quickly, I put the documents back exactly as they were, arranged the magazines on top, and left the office. William was returning earlier than expected. "Juliet, where are you?" His voice had that falsely sweet tone that I had learned to fear. "I'm here, just came out of the bathroom," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. He stared at me for a few seconds, as if trying to read my thoughts. "You seem agitated. Did you take your medicine today?" "Yes, of course," I lied, forcing a smile. "Great. I brought the cake for Mother. I need you to set the table for dinner. We want everything perfect for her." I spent the rest of the day preparing the birthday dinner, setting out the best china, arranging flowers in vases, all as if nothing had changed. But inside, I was boiling. Every minute beside them was torture, knowing what they planned to do to me. During dinner, William opened a very expensive bottle of champagne. "A toast to the best mother in the world," he said, raising his glass. "Mrs." Helen smiled, that cold smile that never reached her eyes. I raised my glass too, pretending to participate in the celebration, but I didn't drink a single sip. I didn't trust anything that came from them. "Juliet isn't drinking," Mrs. Helen observed. "Are you feeling ill, dear?" "Just a slight headache," I replied. "I don't want alcohol to make it worse." William placed his hand on mine, subtly squeezing it. "Perhaps you should take one of your pills. Would you like me to get it for you?" "No," I replied too quickly. I lowered my voice, trying to appear calm. "It's not necessary. It will pass." The two exchanged a look I knew all too well from those months, a silent communication that said, "She's getting out of control." It was after dessert that it happened. Mrs. Helen asked me to fetch a photo album from her room to show William some old photos. When I returned with the album, I heard them talking in the dining room, not noticing my approach. "She's suspecting something," William was saying quietly. "I think she's not taking the medication." "Then increase the dose in her tea tonight," Mrs. Helen replied. Dr. Horace said we can double it if necessary. We just need to keep her under control for 2 more weeks. After they commit her, all problems will be solved. And if she resists? If she makes a scene? No one will believe her, dear. We have months of documentation of her unstable behavior. All our friends have already noticed how confused she is. Dr. Horace is highly respected in the medical community. It will be our word against that of an unbalanced woman. The tray with the album slipped from my hands, falling with a crash to the floor. Both turned, surprised. For a moment, no one said anything. We stared at each other, and for the first time, I didn't try to disguise what I felt. Fear gave way to anger, an anger that consumed me from within. "Juliet," William began, getting up. "How long have you been there?" "Long enough," I replied, my voice strangely calm. Mrs. Helen tried to remedy the situation. "Dear, you must have misunderstood. We were just—" "No," I shouted, interrupting her. "Don't you dare lie to me now! You're trying to drive me crazy. You're putting drugs in my tea, moving my things, placing speakers in the walls to make me hear voices." William approached, trying to appear conciliatory. "See, Mother, this is what I'm talking about. These persecutory delusions are becoming more frequent. Juliet, dear, you need help." "I know about the documents, William," I said, backing away when he tried to touch me. "I know about the Cayman Islands account. I know about Dr. Horace's false report. I know everything." His countenance changed instantly. The disguise of the concerned husband disappeared, revealing the cold, calculating man he really was. "And who would believe you, Juliet? An emotionally unstable woman with a history of erratic behavior? Do you really think you can stand up to me?" At that moment, I felt something break inside me. Not from pain or despair, but like a dam breaking, releasing a strength I didn't even know I possessed. "I'm leaving here, now." I tried to pass him on my way to the bedroom to get some things, but William grabbed my arm forcefully. "You're not going anywhere, not without my permission." "Let me go," I shouted, trying to break free. "William, the neighbors will hear," Mrs. Helen warned, always concerned with appearances. "Take her to the bedroom. Give her those stronger pills the doctor left for emergencies." I fought with all my strength as he dragged me down the hallway. In desperation, I grabbed a heavy porcelain vase that decorated the sideboard and threw it against the wall, causing a loud crash. "Help! Someone help me!" I screamed, hoping some neighbor would hear. "Shut up, you crazy woman!" William growled, covering my mouth with his hand, almost suffocating me. At that instant, the doorbell rang. We all froze. Mrs. Helen looked at William, panicked. The doorbell rang again, insistent. "Must be some neighbor complaining about the noise," she whispered. "I'll answer it. Take her to the bedroom, quick." As William dragged me to the bedroom, I heard the front door open and Mrs. Helen's sugary voice. "Good evening. How can I help you?" And then, like a miracle, I heard the voice that restored my hope. "Good evening. I'm Eleanor Brandon, Juliet's sister. I came to surprise her." My sister had arrived a day earlier than planned. Gathering strength I didn't know I had, I bit William's hand with all my might. He screamed in pain, loosening his grip enough for me to break free. "Elle, I'm here! Help me!" I shouted, running toward the living room. What followed was chaotic. Eleanor, immediately realizing something was wrong, tried to enter the apartment. Mrs. Helen tried to prevent her. William came after me, furious. Our screams attracted the attention of other neighbors, who began to gather in the hallway. "She's having a psychotic episode," William tried to explain to the curious neighbors. "My wife is sick. We need to take her to the hospital." "Lies!" I screamed, clinging to my sister. "They're trying to have me committed by force to get my money. They've been drugging me for months. They installed speakers in the walls to make me hear voices." I saw the doubt in the neighbors' eyes. Who would they believe? The respectable engineer and his elegant mother, or the hysterical woman shouting apparently absurd accusations? It was then that Eleanor, my always sensible sister, spoke with a firm voice. If my sister is having psychological problems as you claim, then you won't mind if we call the police and an ambulance, correct? Let's let authorities and independent doctors assess the situation. William's face paled. There's no need to involve strangers in a family matter. We have our own doctor. I insist, said Eleanor, already with the phone in her hand. If there's nothing wrong happening here, you have nothing to fear. That night marked the beginning of the end of my nightmare. Eleanor's unexpected arrival, the neighbors witnessing everything, the mention of the police. It was the last straw that made the carefully crafted plan by William and Mrs. Helen collapse. In the confusion that followed, I managed to whisper to Eleanor, in his office. Documents hidden under engineering magazines. Proof of everything. My sister, always astute, immediately understood the message. That night, I slept in the house of a downstairs neighbor who took pity on my situation, while Eleanor kept an eye on the apartment to ensure William didn't destroy evidence. It was the first night in months that I slept without fear, knowing that, finally, the nightmare was beginning to end. The morning after the confrontation was crucial for my liberation. Eleanor arrived early at the neighbor's house where I had spent the night, bringing a briefcase with some documents. I managed to get into William's office, she explained, with a gleam of determination in her eyes. While you were sleeping, I convinced the building manager to accompany me to the apartment. I said I needed to get your medicines and clothes. William couldn't prevent it with the manager there as a witness. My sister was always smart. While apparently getting my things from the bedroom, she quickly entered the office and found the documents I had mentioned. Juliet, this is very serious, she said, spreading the papers on the kitchen table of the neighbor. Bank transfers, forged documents. This is criminal, and this medical diagnosis. How could they do this to you? The neighbor, Mrs. Irma, a retired lady who lived alone, looked over our shoulders. My late husband was a lawyer, she commented. You need to take this to the police immediately. But I knew it wouldn't be that simple. William was well connected in Columbus. He had influential friends, including in the police. Moreover, he and Mrs. Helen had worked for months to build the image of a mentally unstable wife. Who would believe my word against theirs? We need professional help, Eleanor decided. I'm going to call Dr. Emanuel. Dr. Emanuel Asher was an old friend of my father, a respected doctor who now lived in Columbus. Although retired, he still maintained strong influence in the local medical community. It was with him that we met that same afternoon in a discreet cafe downtown. The elderly doctor listened attentively as I told everything. The forced medications, the moved objects, the voices in the walls, the documents found. At times, I needed to pause to breathe deeply, fighting back tears. Eleanor complimented with what she had witnessed the night before. This is abominable, Doctor, Emanuel finally said, his wrinkled face contorted with indignation. I know Dr. Horace by reputation. I never trusted him. Always too close to rich families, always willing to provide convenient diagnoses for those who can pay. He examined the medical report that Eleanor had recovered. This here is an ethical abomination. There's no adequate clinical history, no reports of therapeutic sessions, no justification for such a serious diagnosis. And compulsory commitment? This can only be authorized in extreme situations after careful evaluation. Dr. Emanuel removed his glasses and rubbed his tired eyes. Juliet, you need to undergo an independent medical evaluation immediately, not to prove your sanity, which to me is evident, but to officially document that you were a victim of systematic psychological abuse. That same afternoon, I was examined by two specialists recommended by Dr. Emanuel, a psychiatrist and a neurologist. The examinations were thorough. Blood and urine samples were collected to check for residues of the medications they had forced me to take. Meanwhile, Eleanor and Dr. Emanuel went to a law firm recommended by Mrs. Irma. Dr. Thomas Mendez, a lawyer specializing in family law, agreed to help us immediately after hearing our story. "What your husband and mother-in-law did has a name," explained Dr. Thomas when we met in his office the next day. "It's called gaslighting, a cruel form of psychological abuse where the aggressor manipulates the victim to the point of making her question her own sanity. It's difficult to prove, but with the documentation you've obtained, we have a solid case." The action plan was meticulously drawn up. First, a protective order to keep me away from William and Mrs. Helen. Then, a technical inspection of the apartment to document the speakers hidden in the walls. And finally, a complete audit of my bank accounts to track the money diverted by William. "It won't be an easy battle," warned Dr. Thomas. "Your husband will try to use the alleged psychiatric diagnosis against you. He'll say it's all delusions of a disturbed mind. But we now have physical evidence, and most importantly, we have witnesses." News of my situation spread among the building's neighbors. To my surprise, several offered to testify. The young woman from 501 told how she had noticed William carrying strange tools and materials into the apartment late at night. The gentleman from 302 confirmed having seen Mrs. Helen tampering with the mailbox, intercepting correspondence. The building manager herself admitted that William had asked her not to deliver any correspondence directly to me. The net was closing, but not around me, around them. A week after the confrontation, Dr. Thomas obtained a court order for an inspection of the apartment. Accompanied by court officers, experts, and my lawyer, I returned to that place that had been my prison. William wasn't there, probably warned by some friend in court, but Mrs. Helen was, furious with the invasion. "This is absurd, a farce. My son will hear about this." The experts worked meticulously, ignoring the lady's protests. It didn't take long for them to find the speakers hidden in the walls of the bedroom and living room. In William's office, they found recording equipment and boxes of psychiatric medications in dosages much higher than prescribed in any prescription. Mrs. Helen's face transformed when the officers began cataloging the evidence. From indignant, she became frightened. "This was all William's idea?" she muttered when the experts moved away. "I only did what my son asked." "He said it was for your own good, Juliet." Typical. The mask fell, and the real Helen appeared, cowardly and willing to betray even her own son to save herself. "You'll have the opportunity to explain all this in court," Dr. Thomas coldly replied. The following weeks were intense. Testimonies, hearings, medical examinations, psychological evaluations. William's strategy was predictable. He tried to discredit me, claiming that I had suffered from mental disorders for years and that everything he did was try to help me. He even brought testimonies from friends who confirmed having noticed my erratic behavior. But the mountain of evidence was irrefutable. The reports of the specialists recommended by Dr. Emanuel proved that I had been subjected to excessive doses of psychiatric medications without clinical necessity. The technical expertise documented the manipulation devices installed in the apartment. The financial audit revealed a complex scheme to divert my assets. The final blow came when Dr. Thomas managed to get a subpoena for Dr. Horace. Confronted with the evidence and threatened with losing his medical license, the psychiatrist broke down. He confessed that he had issued reports without examining me properly, at William's request, in exchange for financial favors. 3 months after that night of confrontation, I obtained a legal separation with the right to compensation for moral and material damages. The offshore accounts were tracked and the diverted money recovered. William and Mrs. Helen faced criminal charges for fraud, attempted illegal commitment, and psychological abuse. Dr. Horace lost his medical license and also faced criminal charges. The legal victory was important, but true liberation came from within. During those months of legal battle, I went through an intense therapeutic process with Dr. Louise, a psychologist specialized in trauma. With her help, I began to rebuild my self-confidence, to trust my perception of reality again, to heal the invisible wounds that period of manipulation had left. What they did to you was try to steal not only your money, but your identity, explained Dr. Louise in one of our sessions. They almost managed to make you doubt yourself, your own mind. Your greatest victory wasn't in court, Juliet. It was having resisted, having kept alive that flame of certainty that you weren't crazy. When it was all over, I didn't want to remain in Columbus. There were too many memories, too many ghosts. I needed a complete fresh start. Eleanor, who had remained by my side throughout the process, suggested we return to Millfield, close to family. But I knew I needed something new, a place without associations with the past. Let's go to Portland, I suggested. I've heard it's a beautiful city, well planned, with many trees, a good place to start over. And so, in January 1975, at 26 years of age, I embarked on a new journey. Eleanor decided to come with me. Someone needs to keep an eye on you, sis, she joked. We used part of the compensation to buy a simple but comfortable house in Portland. The rest I invested carefully, this time with total control over my money. A few months later, I met Ernest, a widowed history professor who lived on the same street. A kind, patient man, totally different from William. We started as friends. I wasn't ready for a relationship yet. He respected my time, my space, my fears. It was like this, with calmness and respect, that true love finally entered my life. And it was with Ernest that 2 years later I had my daughter Claire, the light of my life, proof that even after the greatest darkness we can find happiness again. And so, my dears, we come to the present day. I'm here with my 76 well-lived years, still in the same Portland that welcomed me when I most needed a fresh start. The city has grown, modernized, but maintained that welcoming atmosphere that enchanted me from the first moment. My house in Laurelhurst continues to be my corner of peace. The garden I planted almost 50 years ago is more beautiful than ever. The cherry trees that were saplings when I arrived now color the yard with pink blossoms each spring. The cherry tree I planted in honor of the one from my childhood in Millfield has already provided fruit for 3 generations of the family. Ernest, my companion for more than 40 years, left us 5 years ago. Pancreatic cancer that advanced too quickly. It was 45 years of a peaceful, respectful, affectionate love, the complete opposite of what I experienced with William. Ernest was a wonderful father to Claire, a dedicated teacher for generations of Portland students, and the best husband I could have asked for. I miss him every day, but I'm grateful for the time we had together. My daughter Claire followed in my footsteps and became an architect. She has a small office right here in Portland, where she mainly designs sustainable houses with natural light utilization and rainwater harvesting. At 48, she is my pride, a competent professional, dedicated mother, and present daughter. After her divorce 10 years ago, she came back to live with me, bringing my 2 grandchildren, Jack and Beatrice, who are now adults and in college. Jack, my eldest grandson, is studying medicine at Oregon Health and Science University. He wants to be a psychiatrist, ironies of life, right? But a humanized psychiatry, which treats patients as people, not as cases. He says he was inspired by my story to choose this profession. Grandma, I want to help people like you, not like that corrupt doctor who almost had you unjustly committed, he told me once, making me cry with emotion. Beatrice, the youngest, is in her 2nd year of law and already interns at a firm that defends women victims of violence. Smart and determined, like her great-aunt Eleanor, my Bee doesn't let anything slide. Nobody is going to gaslight my clients and get away with it, Grandma, she declares, with that fire in her eyes that reminds me so much of my sister. Ah, Eleanor. My dear sister left us 2 years ago at 80. She also lived here in Portland, never married, dedicated herself to a career as a mathematics teacher. She was the second mother to my grandchildren, my best friend, my confidant. In recent years, she suffered from Alzheimer's, in a cruel irony for someone who was always so lucid and rational. I cared for her until the end, as she cared for me in those terrible moments in Columbus. My routine today is peaceful and pleasant. I wake up early, around 6 in the morning, a habit I've kept since childhood. I drink my black coffee on the porch, watching the birds that visit the trees in the yard. Robins, chickadees, finches, each with its particular song, its personality. 3 times a week, I go to the Portland Women's Center, where I coordinate a support group for women who have suffered psychological violence. I share my experience, listen to their stories, offer a friendly shoulder and practical guidance. If I survived, you can too, I tell them. And when I see the spark of hope in the eyes of a woman who arrives broken, I know that all the suffering I went through had some purpose. On free afternoons, I tend the garden, do handicrafts, read a lot. I rediscovered the pleasure of drawing, something I had abandoned after the trauma. They're no longer architectural projects, but watercolors of landscapes, flowers, everyday scenes. My hands aren't as steady, but they can still capture the beauty I see around me. On Fridays, I have my sacred meeting with senior friends, a group we formed more than 20 years ago. We are 6 ladies, all with stories of overcoming. We meet at the Plaza Cafe near the cathedral for an afternoon of conversations, laughs, and now and then some shared tears. We talk about our children, grandchildren, joint pains, new recipes, books we've read. A simple life, but rich in human connections. About William and Mrs. Helen, I know little. After the trial, I made a point of cutting any contact. I learned, years later, that he was convicted, but served a sentence too light for the crime he committed. Mrs. Helen died in the 1980s, alone in a nursing home in Columbus. They said her son never visited her. William tried to rebuild his life, married again to a young heiress, but the scandal of our case forever tainted his reputation. He ended up losing everything in failed businesses and alcohol. I could say I feel satisfaction with their fate, but the truth is, I feel nothing anymore. Neither anger, nor resentment, nor desire for revenge. Time and therapy, lots of therapy, helped me release this weight. As Dr. Louise, who still sees me occasionally, says, forgiving doesn't mean saying what they did is right. It means you won't allow hatred to occupy space in your life. And that's how I live today, at 76 years old, in my cozy little house in Portland, surrounded by the love of my daughter and grandchildren, by memories of my Ernest, by the affection of my friends, by the gratitude of the women I help. A simple, serene life, without unnecessary luxuries, but rich in meaning and true connections. When I look back at that 25-year-old architect who was almost destroyed by a cruel husband and a manipulative mother-in-law, I feel a mixture of compassion and admiration. Compassion for the pain she didn't deserve to go through. Admiration for the strength she didn't know she had. If there's one lesson I've learned in this entire journey, it's that we are stronger than we imagine. That our mind, this wonderful gift we've been given, can be our prison or our liberation, and that, even in the darkest nights, there is always a light, however small, guiding our way back home. My dears who have accompanied me this far, I want to leave a special message for you, especially for those who might be going through a situation similar to what I experienced. When we're in an abusive relationship, we often can't see the ties that bind us. It's as if we were surrounded by a dense fog that doesn't let us see the path. Gaslighting, this cruel psychological manipulation that makes you doubt your own sanity, is one of the most dangerous types of abuse, precisely because it attacks what we have most precious: our mind, our perception of reality. When someone starts moving your things around, denying what you saw or heard, making you question your memories and feelings, be alert. This isn't love, it's not care, it's not genuine concern. It's control, it's abuse. If you're feeling that something isn't right in your relationship, trust that instinct. Our intuition often perceives danger even before our conscious mind. If the people around you are being pushed away, if you're increasingly isolated, if your decisions are constantly questioned or ridiculed, seek help. I learned that age doesn't define our strength, but rather our ability to start over each day. When I fled that apartment in Columbus at 26, I thought my life was over. How could I trust anyone again? How could I rebuild everything I had lost? But life has these surprises. The time we think will destroy us ends up molding us, strengthening us. My wrinkles are maps of survival. Each one tells a story of pain overcome. I look in the mirror today and see a 76-year-old woman who went through storms, who almost drowned, but who found the strength to swim to the shore. And if I could do it, you can too. Life taught me that even in the deepest darkness, our inner light never goes out. Even on days when I was so drugged by medications that I could barely formulate a coherent thought, there was a tiny flame inside me that refused to be extinguished. It was this flame that kept me alive, that made me suspicious, that gave me courage to seek the truth. I never allowed my dignity to be stolen, even when they tried to take everything from me. They tried to convince me I was crazy, tried to isolate me from my family, tried to rob me, but there was something they couldn't touch, my essence, my soul. No matter how much they tried to diminish me, there was a part of me that knew who I really was. I discovered that we are stronger than we imagine, especially when we think we can't take anymore. On that night of confrontation, when everything seemed lost, I found a strength I didn't know existed within me. And you will find it too, if you need to. Time doesn't heal all wounds, but it teaches us to live with them and still smile. I still carry the scars from that period today. There are moments when I still startle when something disappears at home, when someone questions my memory about some event. But I've learned to recognize these triggers, to breathe deeply, to anchor myself in the present. My story isn't about what they did to me, but about how I chose to respond. I could have sunk into the role of victim, could have let bitterness and resentment consume the rest of my life. But I chose to transform my pain into purpose, helping other women identify and escape abusive situations. I learned that true strength isn't in never falling, but in getting up every time. And there were many falls along the way. Recovery isn't linear. There are good days and bad days, moments of courage and moments of fear. The important thing is to move forward, one small step at a time. Abuse leaves invisible scars, but recovery shows that we can flourish even after the storm. Today, when I look at the women in my support group and see those who arrived broken transforming into warriors, I know it's worth fighting. It's worth believing in the possibility of a better life. I discovered that my voice, even trembling, has power when I decide to use it. For a long time, I remained silent, afraid of not being believed. But when I finally spoke, when I told my truth, I realized that my words had the power not only to free me, but to illuminate the path for others who were still in darkness. Age has given me the wisdom to understand that it's never too late to start over. At 26, I thought my life was over. At 76, I know that each day is a new opportunity. If you're going through difficult times now, remember, your story is still being written and you have the power to change its course. My dears who are watching me, if this video touched your heart, if my story resonated with you in some way, I'd like to ask a special favor. Click the subscribe button and activate the bell. It's not out of vanity or for numbers. It's because each subscription helps me reach more people who might need to hear this message of hope. If you know someone who has been behaving strangely lately, who is isolating themselves, who seems confused or afraid without apparent reason, share this video with that person immediately. A message, a shared video, can be the difference between despair and hope, between staying trapped or finding the courage to leave. And if you yourself are in a relationship where you constantly doubt your perception, where your memories are questioned, where your partner controls your access to friends and family, please seek help now. Don't wait until you're completely isolated. Don't wait until you lose confidence in yourself. There are people ready to believe you, to support you, to help you find your way back to the light. Tell me here in the comments if you or someone you know has experienced a situation of psychological manipulation. Your testimony can help others identify signs of abuse in their own lives. Do this now, don't wait another minute. In any country, in any culture, psychological manipulation is a form of violence that leaves deep marks. Look for information about support organizations in your region. No matter where you are, there are people willing to help, to listen to your story, to believe in you. Because, my dears, what I never told anyone until today is that, in the first nights after I fled that apartment, I still heard the voices in the walls, even knowing they were fake. The trauma was so deep that my brain continued to reproduce those whispers for months, and this is something that will accompany me until my last breath. Before I finish, normally at this part of the video, less than 1% of people are still watching me here, so if you were one of the people who stayed until now, comment the word resilience. Thank you so much, dear.